Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley. Each and every show, we talk to the experts to get the lowdown on the ever-changing social, marketing, digital landscape. This show is no different. Producer Will, episode number 71. Let's get into the names here so we can name our episode properly before I get into the guest for today's show.
According to thefamouspeople.com, following folks are 71 years old. Stevie Wonder, Ron Perlman, Bruce Springsteen, the boss, Don Johnson, Gene Simmons, William H. Macy, I should say, Jay Leno, Richard Branson, who I think just got back from space.
By the way, I tweeted this the other day. That's the new flex, right? Like the flex used to be buy a Rolex or a Rolls Royce. The new flex, if you're a billionaire, is just going to the edge of space, which... Wow.
I saw one in regards to Bezos, and it said, like speaking from his ex-wife's perspective, you get $50 billion on the divorce, and then your husband literally leaves the planet. Pretty good situation.
Yeah.
That's it. The last one, John W. Henry, who I believe owns the Red Sox.
I'm gonna call an audible here, Will Kelly, and it is known that one of the producers on the show as well, David Furker, wore number 71 in high school as a nose tackle?
Speaking of the devil, I believe he just walked into the studio.
Nose tackle or a defensive lineman?
High school nose tackle, right? Yep. Number 71?
All right.
Yep. All right, there it is.
Will Kelly, this is a David Furker podcast right here on the Business Social. I mean, come on.
Perfect timing.
I don't know what number you wore in high school, Will, but I think we've already passed it, unfortunately.
I was number 11.
Yep, we already have a number 11 here on the show.
Maybe 111 will come back.
All right, so let's do it. I'll promise you that, Will, 111. All right, so the director of social media at the NHL, the National Hockey League, Sean Dennison, is going to join us. I always love talking to folks at the league level. I know we've talked to the NFL on the program and now going into the NHL. I'm also really excited to talk about Luke Prokop, the Nashville Predators, obviously prospect that came out as gay, the first active player under contract to do so in the NHL. So I think that's really going to be able to, in my opinion, take the league to new heights and really be able to diversify the audience. And I think it's good stuff. We saw the same with Carl Nassib, right, over on the Raiders. So interesting this is happening over the course of a month, but I think awesome opportunity. So I want to ask him about that. And then there's a lot of stuff they've been working on. If you've noticed NHL, they have a great account, Will. I'm sure you follow it, the Stanley Cup account. They do some great work on there, and just excited to dig in. So let's do it. Episode number 71, the director of social media at the National Hockey League, Sean Dennison. All right, he is the director of social media at the National Hockey League, the NHL. Sean Dennison joins us on the Business of Social. Sean, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, David. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course. So excited to dig into what is going on over at the NHL. 7 years now, man. It's almost a decade over.
Coming up on 7, but almost. It's been a quick and a long 7 years.
It's awesome. So for the listeners, why don't you, I'm sure you can do a much better job than me perusing your LinkedIn, but break it down for us. What do you do day to day? What do you oversee? How's it all work over there?
Well, each day is different, but I oversee our social media department. I report directly into our CMO, Heidi Browning.
Yep.
And our social media department is responsible for a bunch of different things. Obviously, we are the lead, the overarching governing body, and we manage the content and strategy and programming across all of our kind of owned and operated social accounts and platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Reddit, and so on. We also work really closely with all 32 of our member clubs, 32 especially now. The Seattle officially have a team as of last night. And so we work really closely with all 32 of our clubs on different initiatives, how we can support and amplify each other, and really extending that ecosystem of the NHL, that digital and social ecosystem. And then also our players too. And so we have hundreds of players across the league, and part of our department is focused on what we call social player development. And that is getting our players more active, comfortable, and proficient across social media, because that's where fans really want to connect. Our players are the gateway into our sport. And so how we can provide them with that content, those resources, education, and empowerment to be active and proficient on social is huge. We have an in-game team who focuses on really capitalizing on those real-time moments, especially when our broadcasts are live. And then also how we integrate brands and sponsors across our content and monetize our social.
Awesome, man. Well, I guess I always like to start kind of top level. What is your core belief on how to approach social marketing from a league level?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of social media is there's not one way to do it. But for leagues, and I guess I should say there's not one way to do it for brands, companies, and organizations. Right. But for a sports league, it plays a lot of different roles. I think one is certainly entertainment and providing fans with that content that they seek. Sports are one of those few brands that still benefit from having really great organic reach on social. Certainly, we have a paid media strategy to go along with it as well. But providing fans with that, one, the highlights, and also everything else that comes along with hockey, the culture and the sport, the stuff that they're going to want to share and engage with, whether that be those moments between fans and players or user-generated content, or other parts of hockey culture that we certainly want to share with them. So one is entertainment. Two is building a community, and one where people really feel connected and welcomed and involved, and where they can see themselves. And really using social to grow our audience and reach new fans. It's really the first and most frequent touch point that our brand can operate. And so we play a big role in that.
That's awesome. And then talk to me a little bit about your ecosystem. I had pretty much your equivalent over at the NFL talk about just the ability for your reach, right? When you factor in the league, you factor in your players, you factor in your teams, there's so much ability for distribution of a content or initiative. So can you walk me through maybe an example how you do that day to day, or maybe with certain campaigns where you tap into like that entire ecosystem that can really, I don't know, probably 100x your following in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, players make up, I want to say about 56% of followers in the social ecosystem. So the more players are publishing and the more active they are, the more people that we're reaching and really engaging. And then our clubs are certainly an extension of that. So we see our clubs and our players as extensions and touch points of the NHL brand. I think with some of our programs is a really good example of how it goes across that entire ecosystem is something like the NHL Fan Choice Awards. We've done it now for 4 years, and it originally came and was developed with the goal of highlighting all of the great things that occur, for the most part, off the ice. So player personalities, what they do on social media, and great content from there, and allowing fans to really vote on those things and connect with these players, these personalities, and the other parts of hockey culture that that you might not necessarily see every day. And so we certainly promote it and run it from a league level. We give every team the opportunity and ability to promote it and engage with it as well. So every team has a nomination, and we work with them to figure out, who's the best player from their team to nominate for certain categories. And then they can certainly campaign for the players. And we've seen players also campaign for themselves or their teammates. And so it's not serious. It's lighthearted. And I think that's why it works so well on social media. We generally tend to run it during the playoffs, later in the playoffs when less teams are active on the ice. So it gives them something to promote and certainly engage their fans with.
Yep, that's awesome. Something really cool happened to the league last week, which Nashville Predators prospect Luke Prokop came out as the first active player under contract in the NHL, come out as gay. I think the commissioner it was awesome what he said. Like, we pledged to make everything possible to ensure his experience is welcoming, and then the league is ready to provide full support. What an awesome, story for the NHL, because I think that's such a way to extend the brand, extend the messaging, and support an active player in this journey.
It was a momentous day on Monday, and I think everyone is really proud of Luke for his bravery and is willing to come out and do that. And it was really awesome to see the support from within the league, across all the clubs, and also players. And I think that was the support that everyone expected. But you just weren't. You can never tell what you're going to get from them. So it was really awesome to really see that. And I hope that there comes a day where those types of announcements aren't even necessary. Right. We're not there yet, and I don't think sports as a whole are, but it was really great to see that. And we're really proud of Luke for his bravery and willing to do that.
Yeah, we're all about, obviously supporting equality, advancement of minority groups on this podcast and with STN. I doing some audits with some different NHL clubs as well on our side of things. There's, it's really interesting. Like there's some, of course, the trolls and the people that say terrible things on the internet. What's really interesting about that, the NHL, is these usually are people that aren't necessarily fans of the team. They're not following the team, but they're saying some bad things, obviously, in the comments when it comes to this stuff. So I guess now with the first active player coming out, like you just said, like how can the NHL, you think, leverage that just to make sure that the entire community kind of gets behind that?
So I think a couple ways, so much of that conversation occurs on social media, as we know. So we have a really big responsibility to curate and cultivate a community that is as welcoming as possible, and really having a no tolerance policy of any unwelcoming behavior. We want people to be able to see themselves as members of our community, regardless of their background, ethnicity, you name it. And so we, as stewards of the brand and, moderators of our channels, it's up to us to set those standards and expectations and then hold people accountable. And so we're certainly doing that. We know our clubs do. We want to make sure that we can provide them with the resources, tools, and, support and education to do that as well.
And I think I bring that up because I think you and your team did a great job over the last few days. Just anybody that would say anything negative, you guys quickly said, this doesn't represent our brand, our ethics, what we're trying to do here, which is just an awesome way, I think, to combat any negativity that came from what was, like you said, a beautiful announcement. What do you think the one competitive advantage is that you feel the NHL may have over the other major sports leagues?
Well, there are a couple things. One is that I think when you look at the competitive distribution across the league and that parity, it's really unmatched. There is really the possibility that any team can be successful in a given season in playoffs. And so it's incredibly unpredictable, and especially the playoffs. You've seen it over the past few years in which teams are winning that you might not have expected. Now, Tampa Bay was an absolute juggernaut this year. So I don't think people were super surprised that they won, but they're certainly deserving. But that's the way that the NHL has really operated, that on any given night, you can witness generational talent. I think the competition and speed and skill that you see on the ice every single night really has the potential to blow your mind. And so at any given point in time, you're going to see something pretty incredible. We also have the most action actually on broadcast. So at any given point in time, you're probably watching action as opposed to being between plays. I also think we have the most exciting postseason in all of sports. And I also think we have the greatest trophy in all of sports,
I agree.
Which also has its own Twitter and Instagram account. So I think those are just a few of the things.
That's an easy win right there. Definitely the best championship trophy. Let's talk about Seattle for a little bit. So they just had their recent expansion draft, as you mentioned at the top of the show. Even as an NBA guy growing up with the Seattle Supersonics, I'm glad that they're starting to get more franchises up there in Seattle. Maybe the NBA will come back one day too. But what does that do for the league? We've seen expansion across all major 4 sports leagues. And how do you think that helps? And what do you do, I guess, to get that fan base excited again?
Well, I think the Kraken have done an incredible job activating their fan base thus far and getting them really excited. Seattle is an incredible sports town, known for being some of the most passionate fans in all of sports. So I don't think they're going to have any trouble really drumming up that passion for the Kraken. the Vegas Golden Knights, I think, have really surprised a lot of people over the past few years.
And right away being competitive too. I mean, amazing.
So competitive and successful. And I think now anyone, any expansion team that's coming into the NHL feels like they have a chance to be successful soon. So I'm really excited for the Kraken. It's always great to have a new franchise within the league and a whole new fan base to develop. Personally, I love their uniforms. I think their new kits are incredible. I love their branding.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's so much potential just with their, the team nickname of the Kraken. So I'm really excited for them. I can't wait to see them, them on the ice come October. And hopefully they're really successful now that they have a team together.
It's awesome. You know what's funny is, like, as an NBA and NFL guy as well, I think you can make an argument that the TV product is easier and maybe more fun to watch than, depending on what seat you are in the stadium, right? If you're in the nosebleeds at an NBA game, watching on NBA on TNT is just a better experience with the replays and the sound and all that. But NHL, it is such an amazing sport to watch live. And I'm sure you guys have had that conversation internally from a marketing and social standpoint. How do you bring that level of the liveness that is hockey and how amazing it is to watch live to social, to people that may not be in the stadium? Because I'm sure that's been something you guys have talked a lot about.
Well, I certainly agree with you on the front that watching it live is one of the best experiences in sports. And generally, once you get someone to one game, they're going to get bitten by the bug, especially if it's an exciting game for the home team, when you really feel that energy in the arena. So I'm a bit biased there, but I think that is definitely a great tactic to converting people to hockey fans. But when it comes to social media, there are a couple things that we're doing to really show that excitement, the level of skill and speed that occurs on the ice. We're going to have highlights, always. And highlights are something a lot of people have access to, and people expect that. But what we can really do, especially as the league, is provide exclusive and really cool angles and perspectives on the game. And so one thing that we have built over the past few years is what we call our LSC program, and that stands for Live Social Contributors. And it's 64 different individuals across North America, 2 in each of our clubs markets, that are on site for every game, capturing content with high quality cameras like DSLRs, as well as iPhones as well. And providing those perspectives and angles, points of views of not only what's occurring in the stands with the fans, but also what's on the ice. No one else is going to have that. And that's something exclusive that we can provide to our fans. And we've done lots of analysis on that content from our LSCs, whether it's from a DSLR or from an iPhone. And almost every single time it performs better than the broadcast version of that highlight. And I think it's a little bit of that authenticity factor, that raw, uncut factor that is a growing trend. We've seen it amongst Gen Z and others, that they want to see something that just feels more authentic, which definitely is an overused buzzword, but it's true. And that is certainly what we're striving for when we're looking for that content to put out on social.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We worked with a boxing client on ESPN, and one of our, strategies were to have somebody at the ring at all times with an iPhone, just recording 24/7. So when the knockout happens, you have that like front seat look. And to your point, that was the highest engaged content, other than the broadcast highlight was one thing, but actually the raw iPhone content, because you kind of can feel it. You can see the sweat come off the face, like all those things kind of bring people closer to the action, which looks like that's what you guys are doing too at the NHL.
Absolutely. And the data supports it. You've seen it in terms of the new cameras that even some of the broadcasters are using, where you have that depth of field where it's super clear up front. It almost feels like you're there in person and it's blurring the background. It just feels super realistic. Those are the types of things that will catch people's eye and will really be thumb stopping in the social media space, which is just so crowded, and you're fighting for people's attention.
Obviously there's so many fans that love boxing. They love UFC. They can't wait for the big fight on Saturday. I think a huge part of the NHL and people really enjoy, at least a portion, is the fighting in, we call it gloves off, of course, but, fighting in NHL. But I know there's like that from a league level, I'm sure there's that fine balance of this is an amazing clip. This was a great, fisticuffs moment. But, you don't want to become too violent. So how have you guys kind of figured out how to balance that? Because ultimately, I think a lot of people love when that happens, especially live in the arena when that ends up happening. But just curious how you guys do that.
Certainly. Well, fighting is not something that we feel like is something that we need to promote on social media. There's the physical part of our game, the physicality of our game. It's certainly something that we can, that's part of the competitive nature.
Yep.
Fighting is part of the game. The players want it, but it's not something that we feel like is, we need to really be doing on social.
Got it.
So we aim to focus on some of the things that certainly are, engaging and entertaining in other ways.
But maybe a nice check up against the glass. Maybe there's something there.
Certainly, absolutely. Physicality is part of the game,
yeah.
And part of the excitement of the game too. So yeah,
absolutely. So would love to hear your thoughts on, I think every brand is dealing with this across the board, but how to involve fans as you're entering into new markets. Every league wants to get younger. I think every league wants to get more diverse, but you have this fine balance, and we deal with this too with all of our clients. Like, you don't want to alienate a portion of your current audience, but you want to grow in different areas and provide content that's, for Gen Z and to get more diverse. So again, I'm sure a lot of conversations internally you guys have had in those, but how do you, again, another balancing act you have to have, how do you guys approach it?
So a couple ways. Well, to my boss, Heidi Browning's credit,
yeah.
A few years ago, she created what was called the Power Players Council, and it is a internal advisory council, youth advisory council of teenagers who are hockey fans that come from all different backgrounds, ethnicities, and regions throughout North America.
That's awesome.
That advise us on how they consume hockey on social media, on broadcast, ideas, their sounding board. It is like a very interactive focus group that we have that provides us with incredible ideas, insights, and perspectives that, frankly, we otherwise wouldn't have because we have no one working internally that is of that age.
Right.
And Gen Z is such a dynamic and up and coming generation that we have so much learning to do. So that's been super valuable for us. And one of the things that they've certainly told us, as I was just saying earlier, the data reinforces, is that they want more of that authentic content. Mm-hmm. The stuff that is less polished, that is more raw, that certainly features people. But, are those human moments? It doesn't mean they don't value highlights, but certainly focus more on those humans. We operate with this mantra called humans over highlights, where highlights are great, but it's those human stories that really resonate and also that really go viral.
Right.
Those moments where you don't have to be a hockey fan to appreciate it. And so that's really the kind of stories that we aim to tell.
Yeah, I think, you and I growing up too, it was all about the 3.5 minute television package to tell a story. And that just doesn't usually work that well on social media. It's more of quick, or like you said, raw, that authentic content. So that's really interesting, you guys. Is there any campaign or strategy that you guys have done recently that has catered to a younger audience that you've seen be successful, and kind of proud of how you guys laid it out?
Yeah. So another one that I think we can talk about is our NHL Fan Skills program, which, this year, unfortunately, due to COVID, we weren't able to have an all-star weekend, but we still wanted to be able to show off, skills in different ways. And we know we have a really active, passionate, and engaged fan base that are not shy to share content on social. And so NHL Fan Skills had a handful of different categories and challenges in which people could submit their skills, their videos. Nice. Too. So it could be a trick shot, it could be something really cute, humorous, you name it, that fit these categories. That we could then not only promote on social media, but then put on an award show at the end in terms of who these people are. And so the submissions spanned across all generations, but certainly there were plenty of young ones too. And one of the reasons why that and programs like it work so well is another thing we've learned from Gen Z is this quote unquote see me, where they want to be, they want to be represented in the content that they see on social media and from brands. And so that's a really important part of it. And that's why UGC is such a big part of what we do and why it also performs really, really well.
I'm really curious. I've been asking this question to everybody that works in sports because, I come from a sports background. You've been at the NHL for almost 7 years. You had your routine. The season's about to start. You're kind of getting ready. You had your games coming up. And then with COVID, obviously, like overnight, it's done. There's no games to be played. So I guess what went through your mind and how did you shift and evolve and pivot like the favorite word we're all been using for the last 18 months? Walk me through just like, I guess your emotions when you find out that, live sports is at risk for a while.
Yeah, that was an interesting and weird couple weeks, especially the first couple of days when our season went on pause last March. The overused word was unprecedented, but it really was.
Yep.
And I think at first our approach was, all right, let's take a beat, get a feel for, what is the tone and sentiment and how people are feeling right now. Let's not, go too quickly. Let's get a feel for what we need to be doing next and then get into action. And I'm really proud of how our team and the organization as a whole really adapted almost overnight to say, all right, these are the things we need to be doing, because it was a complete disruption to our business.
Yeah.
Complete disruption to the sources of content that we had.
Yeah.
But social media really was now responsible or had the burden of really keeping fans engaged during a time where we didn't have live sports.
Was the fan skills campaign, was that birthed out of that like need for content, or did that come after?
So fan skills was actually earlier this year in 2021.
Got it.
But what we launched was hockey at home in 2020, where one, it was messaging that said you can still consume and engage and interact with hockey, but do it from home in a safe way.
Yeah.
And that's where people were doing it. And so we had lots of fantastic user-generated content from fans as well as players. We saw players post a heck of a lot more during that time period. So those were the silver linings. But we had to come up with new ways in which we entertained our fans, engaged them, and programmed our channels. So we had different live shows, whether that's Zoom reunions with Stanley Cup champion teams, or Zoom Q&As with different players across the league, to really get their faces out there and to keep fans entertained and engaged with us. So
what did you learn during that time? Again, you're trying to pivot, you're trying to do the best you can without having live game highlights. What's something you learned in that period that you're still doing to this day and you'll do in the future because it just worked well? It was a great idea.
So I keep going back to this, but I think it just cemented the value of user-generated content and how much of an opportunity it is to empower different ambassadors, or how many ambassadors there are within our community.
Yeah.
So the content not only performs, really well, but it reinforces that behavior that we want to see from our fans and our audience to serve as just, organic and natural ambassadors for the sport. And as a result, we get a lot back from them. That acknowledgement of having your content shared on social media by the NHL, if you're a hockey fan, is huge. You can almost liken that to being like the modern day autograph, the way
100%.
Yeah, so that type of acknowledgement.
If Michael Jordan retweeted my tweet back in '96, that'd be framed on my wall somewhere. Yeah,
exactly. So that's certainly one of the things that we took away from it. And that our fans are going to be passionate about hockey, whether it's live or not. Of course, we want hockey to be playing as much as possible.
Yeah.
But we're a really passionate fan base.
I know you and I have been screaming from the rooftops, as I say, for the last decade, of the importance of social and how valuable it is. And what's good is I think over the last It's actually because of COVID, I think it's thrusted us into a new frontier of brands understanding the importance of it. I would say, the NBA players, I think a lot of those guys get it, maybe NFL. At the baseball level, it seems like it's kind of a distraction. Like there's not a lot of baseball players that take it really seriously. What have you seen in the NHL in terms of, is there still a little bit of that culture that it's not important, or you kind of have to explain the value of social on that side?
Yeah, and it's been an ongoing effort for us to help shift that culture around, away from being scared of social media. I think when social media first came onto the scene hot and heavy, especially in from 2010 and on, is that there were a lot of caveats with it. Like you had to be careful not to say the wrong thing, because there absolutely are risks that come along with social media. But one is the matter of changing kind of the tone and narrative around it. Yes, be careful and know the things that you need to navigate around. But social media also presents so many opportunities for athletes to grow their brands, to connect directly with fans, to tell their stories, to be an outlet. And it's good for the sport as a whole, because we know people want to follow people first. It's a reason, across social media, the most followed accounts are people, celebrities. That human to human connection is stronger than any human to brand or human to league connection. And so, as I was saying earlier, they definitely are the gateway to our sport. But it's not simply just changing shifting the narrative around. Social media can be really, advantageous and a great opportunity for you to take advantage of. We also need to make sure that we were providing players with that permission, as well as the tools, resources, and support to be more active on social media. And yes, certainly the younger players coming up have had social media their entire lives, really, or especially through their adolescence. So it's second nature to them and they expect it. But we also need to make sure that they feel supported in, how to use the platforms and sharing best practices with them, providing them with content that they otherwise might not have the time or wherewithal to source. So taking a lot of that guesswork out of it and allowing them to share and be active.
Without playing favorites, out of all the guys, are there a handful you could just show as examples that do a pretty decent job of just engaging with their fan base or staying consistent with it? Yeah. So
I have a couple favorites. Robin Leonard, the goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights, is great. He is down to earth. He engages with fans directly. He's not afraid to talk about mental health, which is a really important topic for him. And he's just real. And I think people really like and respect that, whether he's on your team or not. Brendan Gallagher on the Montreal Canadiens is really great, especially on TikTok. He was one of the first NHL athletes to get on TikTok, but he is funny, charismatic. He's just a good actor. He does some really great things. There's some videos or one post he had where he was mimicking Dwight Schrute. So just really good stuff. And it's always entertaining anytime he puts something out on TikTok, especially. And lastly is Mario Ferraro. He has his own YouTube channel. I believe it's called The Youngest of Plugs, in which I believe he does gaming, but he also reviews different technology. So not something that you necessarily would expect out of a professional athlete, but clearly that those are things that are important to him, and he's building his personal brand. So three unique examples, but each in their own right, pretty entertaining and cool.
That's awesome. I got some rapid fire questions here towards the end, but I want to first talk about, I saw this come across my feed, the Stanley tweets, and I know it's still, even after the Cup, is still kind of going on as a campaign, but I'd love just to hear your thoughts on that campaign and the success it's had so far.
Yeah, so it's still active right now. And we developed this in partnership with the sports partnerships team at Twitter, as well as the Twitter Next team. And the insight and background is that winning a Stanley Cup is the greatest honor for any hockey player, front office staff, you name it. And part of that honor for those people is that they get their name etched on the cup in eternity. It's a pretty special honor. And winning a Stanley Cup also doesn't come without that support, that unwavering support that fans provide. Like, you need your fan base behind you. But fans don't get to get their name engraved on the cup.
Yeah.
But what if Twitter and technology could give them kind of like the next best thing? And so we wanted to use our Stanley Cup account on Twitter, which we love and are certainly proud of it.
You guys do a great job with it, for sure.
To prompt fans to tell us in different ways what winning the Stanley Cup would or does mean to them. And so these prompts went to both Tampa Bay as well as Montreal fans during the Stanley Cup final, in which they could tell us really what it would mean to them in different ways. And what we're doing now is selecting the top 52 tweets from Tampa Bay Lightning fans that will be etched onto an installation that will actually live within the Hockey Hall of Fame, the home of the Stanley Cup. So as close as you can get to being enshrined in eternity as a hockey fan for winning a Stanley Cup. And the significance of these 52 tweets is that each year 52 names are engraved onto the Stanley Cup.
That's awesome. Who's your main point of contact at Twitter?
Well, a couple, but Will Xline is our main
good man
sports partnership. I love Will. He's the best.
Yeah, Twitter folks are great. We've had a lot of them on the program, and friends with a lot of them as well. All right, so some rapid fire questions for you, Sean, to kind of wrap us up. What are your favorite? I guess I won't say favorite. What seems to be working the best right now across platforms? When you say, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, what seems to be working best with your audience?
Yeah, so probably doesn't come as much of a surprise that like new products that these platforms introduce tend to perform really well. So
they don't tell you that, but it definitely happens.
It definitely
They'll never admit it.
So on Instagram, it's Reels.
Yep.
It performs super well. We see a lot of viral reach or discoverability reach on those.
To geek out with you for a second, I mean, what we found is if it's a video, it either has to be on Reels or it has to be in an album. Never post a video just by itself.
That is the trick right now.
Yeah, that's the algorithm.
I'm finding a lot of brands, if they have a video that's longer than 60 seconds, or even not for that matter, they will break it up into segments so that you have to swipe through the album. And
there's some stats that came out recently that the algorithm is, I mean, you're just getting a higher engagement rate, obviously on Reels, but on albums over just a static, one video post. So
yeah, absolutely. TikTok is another place. It's we specialize our content for that platform. I'd say 9 out of 10 things that you're going to see on TikTok, you're not going to see on any of our other platforms. And that's really the case more and more across social, is that it's not one size fits all. You really do need to customize for each platform.
And I think TikTok 60% is ages 10 to 24, I believe. So you're just talking to a much different demographic, which is awesome, as you guys want to get younger too,
Totally. And it's a completely different form of storytelling and brand experience. And I think it's great because we get to stretch different creative muscles on that platform. So awesome. I would say those two. And I think the other one that probably goes undervalued is Instagram stories. And I say that because so much actually occurs in stories, but there isn't robust reporting and analytics on it, especially unless you're like an admin or owner of that account.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that goes unrecognized or under-recognized on IG stories.
Awesome. What's a book or newsletter or follow or blog that you read frequently that you get a lot of value out of that you'd recommend people check out?
So let's see. I would say that an account, it's kind of I would go so far as to say it's kind of a blog, just because it's usually long form storytelling. And I think they do it better than almost anyone on social media. And that's Humans of New York. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of people know that, but the thorough, deliberate, and emotional storytelling and how just thematic it is in terms of the stories that he chooses to tell at different times, I think is almost second to none on social. Anytime there is a post, especially if it's like a multi-part story, I know I need to block off a couple minutes to read it and really connect with it. So he's built an incredible brand and a level of like content quality and storytelling that you have to consume it when it comes out.
How big is just like the social dedicated team at the NHL these days?
Yeah, we're a team of 16.
Nice.
Service all different aspects of the organization, including our clubs and players.
Great.
And we're growing.
Cool. So with those 16 people, any favorite apps or marketing tools that, based on all the stuff that goes through your organization on a daily, you just couldn't live without?
Yes, there are. So we couldn't operate without Slack.
Yeah,
we are like, everything is so fast paced that the collaboration and real time that collaboration that Slack provides is so necessary.
By the way, it's kind of scary. Like if Slack just decided to 10x their price monthly, we'd all just be like, all right, like there's nothing you can do, so
there was like
a lot of leverage.
I think there was like a couple months ago where Slack was down for a couple hours in the morning.
Yeah, chaos.
And you almost felt like, wait, what do I do here? Like, how am I supposed to get all this work done?
And the stock market starts, going down. It's pretty essential to almost every brand at this point. Yeah,
it is. It's essential to how we operate, and it's really transformed how our team operates. We're so much more productive and efficient, especially in a remote working environment right now. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it was like nothing changed overnight when COVID hit, but because we were so ingrained in Slack, we were allowed to really pick up and kind of hit the ground running the next day. So that for one. Another is Monday. So we organize almost everything in terms of our content calendar, staffing schedule, programming, so on and so forth. Like project management all occurs within Monday. And it was a beast to get set up. And that's more credit to my team for doing so.
Awesome.
But it's crucial and really keeps us on track.
What about, I asked you this question, like in terms of what are the main metrics you're looking at in terms of analytics, just to make sure you guys are going in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, it depends upon the platform and ultimately what we post. In the end, I do believe that reach is kind of the end all metric on social, because generally that is indicative of content being engaging, or it's being consumed heavily or being shared quite a bit. So reach usually is a good indicator of quality. It's not everything.
Yeah.
But then I think it depends upon not only the medium, but also the type of content you provide. So if it's video, I think it's a watch time and engagement. If it's a graphic or a text only tweet, then I think it's responses or just engagement directly on that post.
Yeah. It is funny, the psychology. When you watch a video, you don't automatically think to double tap it, but if it's static, you do. So it's kind of like, all right, it's a video, so we didn't get many likes, but we got our watch time. So it's really interesting.
It's so
you brought
true.
that up.
Yep.
What's a social media marketing stereotype that you think needs to go away?
That you can just put your intern on it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. I think also that the idea that you can just, you don't have a home for a piece of content, you can just put it on social. And I think that, it's really important to maintain that quality and the integrity of your channels with your fans. That's why they followed you. I think social media can be a fickle place where if you provide fans with entertainment and the stuff they want, they'll stick around. And if you don't, you'll gradually lose them. So I think that's really important. And social is such a complex world now. There's so many different players and mediums and ways to engage fans that you need to be really strategic. And especially if you're any brand that has aspirations for big growth on social, you really need to take it seriously.
100% agree. All right. So obviously a lot of people would aspire to be where you are, director at the NHL. Any advice for up and coming marketers that aspire to be in a seat like you one day?
Well, so I think that there are a couple of ways, and certainly it's a competitive, industry and with big pool of candidates to get into. I think first and foremost, get creative and find ways to differentiate yourself from other candidates. There's so many tools in which you can be creative to set yourself apart. For instance, I saw someone that commissioned a handful of different cameos of them hyping him up for a role in sports content production. And then he sent that to the hiring manager. Like,
that's awesome.
Super creative, but so easy to do. So just like, I'm sure, I don't know what it cost him to do that. I actually don't know if he even got the job, but that's the kind of stuff that I think will help set you apart and shows creativity, tenacity and resourcefulness. Those are things that I think you really need to have in social media and in sports. And then the two others I have is work on really developing your story and being able to market yourself, which frankly is easier said than done. Talking about yourself and marketing yourself isn't necessarily something that everyone has down pat, but it's a skill that requires practice, because I think as a marketer, I'm always interested in how well you can market yourself, because I think that can somewhat relate to how you'll be able to market a brand or product or whatnot. And then the last is, if you do get an interview, do your research. It's the easiest way to disqualify yourself, especially to me, for a role, is if you're not able to answer basic questions related to the job and the organization you're applying to. And you'd be surprised at how often that tends to happen. So get the basics down and then take it a few steps further to bring ideas and opinions to the conversation that show that you've gone further than just looking at the last 3 posts on our Instagram.
One of my favorite questions to ask candidates, my first question I ask every candidate is like, so what is it that you think we do here at STN on a day-to-day? All it takes is a peruse of our website for a few minutes and you know how to answer that question, but you'd be surprised how you're able to kind of like weed out 50% of the candidates by not being able to answer that question correctly. Like, do you know what job you're applying for?
I mean, I love asking them, like, what do you think we don't do well, and what would be something you want to change here?
Right.
Like, I don't want them to just come in and compliment what we're doing. I want new ideas and game changers. And so if you can answer a question like that, great.
All right, finally, we like to ask our current guest if you would recommend anybody in your network that you think would be a phenomenal guest and drop some knowledge on our current listeners. So anybody in your network you think would be a good person to reach out to?
Yeah. So one person that I think has done some awesome stuff at his organization is Dan LaTaraka. So
he's one of my good buddies in the industry.
Has he already been on the show?
He hasn't been on the show yet, though. That's a bad job by me. So yeah, I should have him on. Carolina
so I would do that. I mean, the Canes have been really successful in the ice. I love what they've done within their organization. And then, certainly their Twitter and their social media has been a lot of fun to follow along too. So I would say that. We actually worked with Dan when he was at the Panthers. So I'm still angry we lost Super Bowl 50, but good dude. So I would say him.
Okay.
And then, I mean, it sounds like you've already talked to some of our partners over at Twitter. I've always been really impressed with the Twitter Next team, though, that they're the in-house creative team. So Tom Tirico or Vanessa Kibsey, those are people that we've worked with over there that I think have some pretty incredible ideas and are just a pleasure to work with.
Very cool, man. Well, thank you so much for dropping all the knowledge and the insight on the program, man. That was an awesome time, and hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure. I hope to talk to you again.
All right. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, David.
All right. All right, there it was. The director of social media at the National Hockey League, Sean Dennison, dropping some knowledge on you fine folks. Hope you found value out of that. Will Kelly, Seattle, with their recent expansion draft, they're coming hot and heavy. I'm telling you, I want the Super Songs to come back as well. I know you and I are big NBA fans, so.
They have one of the coolest hashtags on Twitter. It's Sea Kraken, like SEA for Seattle, but it also plays as like a Kraken of the sea. Very strong.
Wow. Yeah, no, great, Brandon. We know some of the folks over there that worked on the marketing launch and the stadium and all that stuff. So they're doing really great work over there.
I believe they sold out of season tickets before the arena was built.
Yeah. And the Seattle's just that's why they got to bring the NBA back there as well. So you got the Seahawks, got the Sounders, of course, in the MLS. Just some great folks there. Yeah. So I love what he broke down a lot of different campaigns, fan skills, Stanley tweets, NHL Fan Choice Awards. I think they've done a pretty good job during COVID and outside of COVID, just really expanding their audience, campaign, diversifying their content. And finally, I also liked what they said there, or what he said there, Will, the Power Players, which is their youth council.
Yeah, to make sure that was such a smart idea.
Smart idea, because every organization has blind spots, and you get a little bit older, you don't know what the young kids, are liking. So, listen, I think it's awesome what they're doing over there and really good insight from Sean. So I appreciate, as always, for you all listening to the program, episode number 71. I appreciate David Furker and producer Will for all their hard work on the program. We got a nice new lens here. I don't know if you can tell the quality on YouTube, but
It's going to be crisp.
this is an expensive piece of glass we got here for the Business Social. This is only for the Business Social podcast. The STN production team are not allowed to touch it. So we will lock it away in a cubby that only me, Furker, and Will can
David
have
Furker's
access
just
to.
smiling ear to ear right now.
I mean, just talking his love language. All right. That has been yet another edition of the Business Social podcast. My name is David Brickley. It's all been powered by the GOAT, STN Digital.